Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with another Bible study. Today we are going to be diving back into Second Chronicles because we left off in Second Chronicles. But before we begin, if you are new here, if you are unfamiliar with what is going on, I hold some unconventional beliefs and I am holding an unconventional Bible study. I suggest starting in Genesis because it is easier to keep up that way. But for those of you who have been tagging along, we are back in Second Chronicles 13 because we left off in Second Chronicles 12. This is the start of a new king. Most of what I am doing the Bible study about has already been discussed in Kings for this. I'm only going to stop if there is something different to talk about as we go along. So, in the 18th year of Jeroboam's reign, Abijah became king of Judah. He reigned in Jerusalem 3 years. His mother's name was Micaiah, daughter of Uriel, and she was from Gibeah. And there was war between Abijah and Jeroboam. Abijah went into battle with an army of 400,000 chosen men, while Jeroboam drew up in formation against him with 800,000 chosen and mighty men of valor. Then Abijah stood on Mount Zemaraim in the hill country of Ephraim and said, "Hear me, O Jeroboam, and all Israel. Do you not know that the Lord, the God of Israel, has given kingship of Israel to David and to his descendants forever by a covenant of salt? Yet Jeroboam, son of Nebat, a servant of Solomon, son of David, rose up and rebelled against his master. Then worthless and wicked men gathered around him to resist Rehoboam of Solomon when he was young, inexperienced, and unable to resist them. And now you think you can resist the kingdom of the Lord, which is in the hands of David's descendants? You are indeed a vast army, and you have with you the golden calves that Jeroboam made you as gods. But did you not drive out the priests of the Lord, the sons of Aaron and the Levites? And did you not make priests for yourselves, as do the peoples of other lands? Now, whoever comes to consecrate himself with a young bull and 7 rams can become a priest of things that are not God's. But as for us, the Lord is our God. We have not forsaken him. The priests who minister to the Lord are sons of Aaron, and the Levites attend to their duties. Every morning and every evening they present burnt offerings and fragrant incense to the Lord. They set out the rows of showbread on the ceremonially clean table, and every evening they light the lamps of the gold lampstand. We are carrying out the requirements of the Lord our God, while you have forsaken him. Now, behold, God himself is with us as our head, and his priests and their trumpets sound the battle call against you. O children of Israel, do not fight against the Lord, the God of your fathers, for you will not succeed." Now, Jeroboam had sent troops around to ambush from the rear, so that while he was in front of Judah, the ambush was behind them. When Judah turned and discovered that the battle was both before and behind them, they cried out to the Lord. Then the priests blew the trumpets, and the men of Judah raised the battle cry. And when they raised the cry, God routed Jeroboam and all Israel before Abijah and Judah. So the Israelites fled before Judah, and God delivered them into their hands. Then Abijah and his people struck them with a mighty blow, and 500,000 chosen men of Israel fell slain. Thus the Israelites were subdued at that time, and the men of Judah prevailed because they relied on the Lord, the God of their fathers. Abijah pursued Jeroboam and captured some cities from him, Bethel, Yashana, and Ephron, along with their villages. Jeroboam did not again recover his power during the days of Abijah, and the Lord struck him down, and he died. But Abijah grew strong, married 14 wives, and became the father of 22 sons and 16 daughters. Now, the rest of the acts of Abijah, along with his ways and words, are written in the treatise of the prophet Iddo. One of those books that we don't have, but it's not all that important. Then Abijah rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David, and his son Asa reigned in his place, and in his days the land was at peace for 10 years. What Asa did was good and right in the eyes of the Lord. He removed the foreign altars and high places, shattered the sacred pillars, and chopped down the Asherah poles. He commanded the people of Judah to seek the Lord, the God of their fathers, and to observe the law and the commandments. He also removed the high places and incense altars from all the cities of Judah. Under him, the kingdom was at peace. That is a direct contradiction to the reports in Chronicles. The high places were left by all the kings in Chronicles, or in Kings. And because the land was at peace, Asa built fortified cities in Judah. In those days, no one made war with him, because the Lord had given him rest. So he said to the people of Judah, "Let us build these cities and surround them with walls and towers, with doors and bars. The land is still ours because we have sought the Lord our God. We have sought him, and he has given us rest on every side." So they built and prospered. And Asa had an army of 300,000 men from Judah, bearing large shields and spears, and 280,000 men from Benjamin, bearing small shields and drawing the bow. All these were mighty men of valor. Then Zerah the Cushite came out against them with an army of 1,000,000 men and 300 chariots, and they advanced as far as Marashah. And Asa marched out against him and lined up in battle formation in the valley of Zephathah near Mareshah. Then Asa cried out to the Lord his God, "O Lord, there is no one beside you. There is no one besides you to help the powerless against the mighty. Help us, O Lord our God, for we rely on you, and in your name we have come against this multitude. O Lord, you are our God. Do not let a mere mortal prevail against you." So the Lord struck down the Cushites before Asa and Judah, and the Cushites fled. Then Asa and his army pursued them as far as Gerar. The Cushites fell and could not recover, for they were crushed before the Lord and his army. So the people of Judah carried off a great amount of plunder and attacked all the cities around Gerar, because the terror of the Lord had fallen upon them. They plundered all the cities, since there was so much plunder there. And they also attacked the tents of the herdsmen and carried off many sheep and camels. And then they returned to Jerusalem. Now the Spirit of God came upon Azariah, son of Oded. He went out to meet Asa and said to him, Listen to me, Asa, and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you when you are with him. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you. For many years Israel has been without the true God, without a priest to instruct them, and without the law. But in their distress they turned to the Lord, the God of Israel, and sought him, and he was found by them. In those days there was no safety for travelers, because residents of the lands had many conflicts. Nation was crushed by nation, and city by city, for God afflicted them with all kinds of adversity. But as for you, be strong. Do not be discouraged, for your work will be rewarded. When Asa heard those words and the prophecy of Azariah, son of Oded, the prophet, he took courage and removed the detestable idols from the whole land of Judah and Benjamin, and from the cities he had captured in the hill country of Ephraim. He then restored the altar of the Lord that was in front of the portico of the Lord's temple. And he assembled all Judah and Benjamin, along with those from the tribes of Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon, who had settled among them, for great numbers had come over to him from Israel, when they saw that the Lord his God was with him. So they gathered together in Jerusalem in the 3rd month of the 15th year of Asa's reign. At that time they sacrificed the Lord 700 oxen and 7,000 sheep from all the plunder they had brought back. And then they entered into a covenant to seek the Lord, the God of their fathers, with all their heart and soul. And whoever would not seek the Lord, the God of Israel, would be put to death. Whether young or old, man or woman, they took an oath to the Lord in a loud voice, with shouting, trumpets, and ram's horns. And all Judah rejoiced over the oath, for they had sworn it with all their heart. Sure they did. Coercion always does that. It makes you perfectly fervent. They had sought him earnestly, and he was found by them, so the Lord gave them rest on every side. King Asa also removed his grandmother Maacah from her position as queen mother, because she had made a detestable Asherah pole. Asa chopped down the pole, crushed it, and burned it in the Kidron Valley. The high places were not removed from Israel, but Asa's heart was fully devoted all his days. See, that's what I was talking about. And he brought into the house of God the silver and gold articles that he and his father had dedicated. And there was no war until the 35th year of Asa's reign. In the 36th year of Asa's reign, Baasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah and fortified Ramah to prevent anyone from leaving or entering the territory of Asa, king of Judah. So Asa withdrew the silver and gold from the treasuries of the house of the Lord in the royal palace. And he sent it with this message to Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, who was ruling in Damascus. Let there be a treaty between me and you, between my father and your father. See, I have sent you silver and gold. Now, go and break your treaty with Baasha, king of Israel, so that he will withdraw from me. Here's the thing about buying your allies is if you buy your allies, then they can be bought by somebody else. And this whole interchange here is just funny to me. Then Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa and sent the commanders of his armies against the cities of Israel, conquering Ijon, Dan, Abel-Maim, and all the store cities of Naphtali. When Baasha learned of this, he stopped fortifying Ramah and abandoned his work. Then King Asa brought all the men of Judah, and they carried away the stones of Ramah and the timbers Baasha had used for his building. And with these materials, he built up Geba and Mizpah. At that time, Hanani, the seer, came to King Asa of Judah and told him, Because you have relied on the king of Aram and not on the Lord your God, the army of the king of Aram has escaped from your hand. Were not the Cushites and the Libyans a vast army with many chariots and horsemen? Yet, because you relied on the Lord, he delivered them into your hand. For the eyes of the Lord roam to and fro over all the earth, to show himself strong on behalf of those whose hearts are fully devoted to him. You have acted foolishly in this matter. From now on, therefore, you will be at war. Asa was angry with the seer and became so enraged over this matter he put the man in prison. And at the same time, Asa oppressed some of the people. Now, the rest of the acts of Asa from beginning to end are indeed written in the books of the kingdoms of Judah and Israel. In the 39th year of his reign, Asa became diseased in his feet, and his malady became increasingly severe. Yet even in his illness, he did not seek the Lord, but only the physicians. So in the 41st year of his reign, Asa died and rested with his fathers, and he was buried in the tomb he had cut out for himself in the city of David. They laid him on a bier that was full of spices and various blended perfumes. Then they made a great fire in his honor. Asa's son Jehoshaphat reigned in his place and strengthened himself against Israel. He stationed troops in every fortified city of Judah and put garrisons in the land of Judah and in the cities of Ephraim that his father Asa had captured. Now the Lord was with Jehoshaphat because he walked in the earlier ways of his father David, which means he was war thirsty. He did not seek out the Baals, but he sought the God of his father and walked by his commandments rather than the practices of Israel. So the Lord established the kingdom in his hand, and all Judah brought him tribute, so that he had an abundance of riches and honor, and his heart took delight in the ways of the Lord. Furthermore, he removed the high places and Asherah pole from Judah. In the 3rd year of his reign, Jehoshaphat sent his officials Ben-Hail, Obadiah, Zechariah, Nethanel, and Micaiah to teach in the cities of Judah, accompanied by certain Levites, Shemaiah, Nethaniah, Zebadiah, Asahel, Shemiramoth, Johanathon, Adonijah, Tobijah, and Tob-Adonijah, along with the priest of Elishama and Jehoram. They taught throughout Judah, taking with them the book of the law of the Lord. They went throughout the towns of Judah and taught the people. And the dread of the Lord fell upon the kingdoms of the land that surrounded Judah, so that they did not make war against Jehoshaphat. Some Philistines also brought gifts and silver as tribute to Jehoshaphat, and the Arabs brought him 7,700 rams and 7,700 goats from their flocks. Jehoshaphat grew stronger and stronger. He built fortresses and store cities in Judah, and kept vast supplies in the cities of Judah. He also had warriors in Jerusalem who were mighty men of valor. These were their numbers according to the houses of their fathers. From Judah, the commanders of thousands. Adnah, the commander, with him 300,000 mighty men of valor. Next to him, Johanan, the commander, with him 280,000. And next to him, Amasiah, son of Zitri, the volunteer for the Lord. and with him 200,000 mighty men of valor. From Benjamin, Eliada, a mighty man of valor, and with him 200,000 armed with bows and shields. And next to him Jehoshaphat, and with him 180,000 armed for battle. These were the men who served the king, besides those he stationed in the fortified cities throughout Judah. Now Jehoshaphat had riches and honor in abundance, and he allied himself with Ahab by marriage. And some years later he went down to visit Ahab in Samaria, where Ahab sacrificed many sheep and cattle for him, and the people with him, and urged him to march up to Ramoth Gilead. Ahab, king of Israel, asked Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, "Will you go with me against Ramoth Gilead?" And Jehoshaphat answered, "I am like you, and my people are your people. We will join you in the war." But Jehoshaphat also said to the king of Israel, "Please inquire first for the word of the Lord." So the kings of Israel assembled the prophets, 400 men, and asked them, "Should we go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or should we refrain?" "Go up," they replied, "and God will deliver it into the hands of the king." But Jehoshaphat asked, "Is there not still a prophet of the Lord here of whom we can inquire?" The king of Israel answered, "There is still one man who can ask the Lord, but I hate him, because he never prophesies anything good for me, but only bad. He is Micaiah, son of Imlah." "The king should not say that," Jehoshaphat replied. So the king of Israel called one of his officials and said, Bring Micaiah, son of Imlah, at once." Dressed in royal attire, the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, were sitting on their thrones at the threshing floor by the entrance of the gate of Samaria, with all the prophets prophesying before them. Now Zedekiah, son of Chenaanah, had made for himself iron horns, and declared, "This is what the Lord says, with these you shall gore the Arameans until they are finished off." And all the prophets were prophesying the same, saying, "Go up to Ramoth Gilead and prosper, for the Lord will deliver it into the hands of the king." And then the messenger who had gone to Micaiah instructed him, "Behold, with one accord the words of the prophets are favorable to the king. So please let your words be like theirs and speak favorably." But Micaiah said, "As surely as the Lord lives, I will speak whatever my God tells me." And when Micaiah arrived, the king asked him, "Micaiah, should we go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or should we refrain?" "Go up in triumph," Micaiah replied, "for they will be given into your hand." But the king said to him, "How many times must I make you swear not to tell me anything but the truth in the name of the Lord?" And again, go back to Kings, but why? So Micaiah declared, "I saw all Israel scattered on the hills, like a sheep without a shepherd. And the Lord said, These people have no master. Let each one return home in peace." Then the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "Did I not tell you that he never prophesies good for me, but only bad?" Micaiah continued, "Therefore hear the words of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing on his right and on his left. And the Lord said, Who will entice Ahab, king of Israel, to march up and fall at Ramoth Gilead?" And one suggested this and another that. Then a spirit came forward and stood before the Lord and said, "I will entice him." "By what means?" asked the Lord. And he replied, "I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets." "You will surely entice him and prevail," said the Lord. "Go and do it." So you see, the Lord has put a lying spirit in the mouth of these prophets of yours, and the Lord has pronounced disaster against you. Then Zedekiah, son of Chenaanah, went up and struck Micaiah in the face and demanded, "Which way did the Spirit of the Lord go when he departed from me to speak with you?" And Micaiah replied, "You will soon see, on that day when you go and hide in an inner room." And the king of Israel declared, "Take Micaiah and return him to Amnon, the governor of the city, and to Joash, the king's son, and tell them that this is what the king says. Put this man in prison and feed him only bread and water until I return safely." But Micaiah replied, "If you ever return safely, the Lord has not spoken through me." Then he added, "Take heed, all you people." So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, went up to Ramoth Gilead. And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, I will disguise myself and go into battle, but you wear your royal robes. So the king of Israel disguised himself and went into battle. Now the king of Aram had ordered his chariot commanders, do not fight with anyone, small or great, except the king of Israel. We talked about treachery and betrayal in Kings. When the chariot commanders saw Jehoshaphat, they said, this is the king of Israel. So they turned to fight against him, but Jehoshaphat cried out, and the Lord helped him. God drew them away from him. And when the chariot commanders saw that he was not the king of Israel, they turned back from pursuing him. However, a certain man drew his bow without taking special aim, and he struck the king of Israel between the joints of his armor. And so the king said to his charioteer, turn around, take me out of the battle, for I am badly wounded. The battle raged throughout that day, and the king of Israel propped himself up in his chariot, facing the Arameans until evening. And at sunset, he died. Then Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, had returned safely to his home in Jerusalem. Jehu, son of Hanani, the seer, went out to confront him and said to King Jehoshaphat, should you help the wicked and love those who hate the Lord? Because of this, the wrath of the Lord is upon you. However, some good is found in you, for you have removed the Asherah poles from the land and have set your heart on seeking God. Jehoshaphat lived in Jerusalem, and once again he went out among the people from Beersheba to the hill country of Ephraim, and turned them back to the Lord, the God of their fathers. He appointed judges in the land, each of the fortified cities of Judah. Then he said to the judges, consider carefully what you do, for you are not judging for man, but for the Lord, who is with you when you render judgment. And now may the fear of the Lord be upon you. Be careful what you do, for with the Lord our God there is no injustice, or partiality, or bribery. Moreover, Jehoshaphat appointed in Jerusalem some of the Levites, priests, and heads of the Israelite families to judge on behalf of the Lord and to settle disputes, and they lived in Jerusalem. He commanded them, saying, you must serve faithfully and wholeheartedly in the fear of the Lord. For every dispute that comes before you from your brothers who dwell in their cities, whether it regards bloodshed or some other violation of law, commandments, statutes, or ordinances, you are to warn them, so they will not incur guilt before the Lord, and wrath will not come upon you and your brothers. Do this, and you will not incur guilt. Note that Amariah, the chief priest, will be over you in all that pertains to the Lord, and Zebediah, son of Ishmael, the ruler of the house of Judah, in all that pertains to the king. And the Levites will serve as officers before you. Act resolutely. May the Lord be with the upright. After this, the Moabites and Ammonites, together with some of the Meunites, came to make war against Jehoshaphat. Then some men came and told Jehoshaphat, a vast army is coming against you from Edom, from beyond the sea. They are already in Hazazon Tamar, that is, in Gedi. Jehoshaphat was alarmed and set his face to seek the Lord, and he proclaimed a fast throughout Judah. So the people of Judah gathered to seek the Lord, and indeed they came from all the cities of Judah to seek him. Then Jehoshaphat stood on the assembly of Judah in Jerusalem in the house of the Lord, in front of the new courtyard, and said, O Lord, God of our fathers, are you not the God who is in heaven? And do you not rule over all the kingdoms of the nations? Power and might are in your hand, and no one can stand against you. Our God, did you not drive out the inhabitants of this land before your people, and give it forever to the descendants of Abraham, your friend? No, he did not. They have lived in the land and have built in it a sanctuary for your name, saying, if disaster comes upon us, whether sword or judgment, plague or famine, we will stand before this temple and before you, and for your name is in this temple. We will cry out to you in our distress, and you will hear us and save us. And now, here are the men of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir. And now, here are the men of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir, whom you did not let Israel invade when they came out of the land of Israel. But Israel turned away from them and did not destroy them. See how they are repaying us by coming to drive us out of the possession that you gave us as an inheritance. Our God, will you not judge them? For we are powerless before this vast army that comes before us. We do not know what to do, but our eyes are upon you. Meanwhile, all the men of Judah and their wives and children and little ones were standing before the Lord. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Yahaziel, son of Zechariah, the son of Benaniah, the son of Yael, the son of Mattaniah, a Levite from Asaph's descendants. And he stood in the midst of the assembly, and he said, Listen, all of you people of Judah and Jerusalem, listen, King Jehoshaphat. This is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army, for the battle does not belong to you, but to God. Tomorrow you are to march down against them. You will see them coming up the ascent of Ziz, and you will find them at the end of the valley facing the wilderness of Yeruel. You need not fight this battle. Take up your position, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord on your behalf. O Judah and Jerusalem, do not be afraid or discouraged. Go out and face them tomorrow, for the Lord is with you. Then Jehoshaphat bowed face down, and all the people of Judah and Jerusalem fell down before the Lord to worship him. And the Levites, from the Kohathanites and Korahites, stood up to praise the Lord, the God of Israel, shouting in a very loud voice. Early in the morning they got up and left for the wilderness of Tekoa. As they set out, Jehoshaphat stood up and said, Hear me, O people of Judah and Jerusalem. Believe in the Lord your God, and you will be upheld. Believe in his prophets, and you will succeed. Then Jehoshaphat consulted with the people and appointed those who would sing to the Lord and praise the splendor of his holiness. As they went out before the army, they were singing, Give thanks to the Lord, for his loving devotion endures forever. The moment they began their shouts and praises, the Lord set ambushes against the men of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir who had come against Judah, and they were defeated. The Ammonites and Moabites rose up against the inhabitants of Mount Seir, devoting them to destruction. And when they had made an end to the inhabitants of Seir, they helped destroy one another. When the men of Judah came to a place overlooking the wilderness, they looked for a vast army, but there were only corpses lying on the ground. No one had escaped. Then Jehoshaphat and his people went to carry off the plunder, and they found on the bodies an abundance of goods and valuables, more than they could carry away. They were gathering the plunder for 3 days because there was so much. On the 4th day they assembled in the valley of Barakah, where they blessed the Lord. Therefore, that place is called the valley of Barakah to this day. Then all the men of Judah and Jerusalem, with Jehoshaphat at their head, returned joyfully to Jerusalem, for the Lord had made them rejoice over their enemies. So they entered Jerusalem and went into the house of the Lord with harps, lyres, and trumpets. And the fear of God came upon all the kingdoms of the land when they heard that the Lord had fought against the enemies of Israel. Then Jehoshaphat's kingdom was at peace, for God had given him rest on every side. So Jehoshaphat reigned over Judah. He was 35 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 25 years. His mother's name was Azubah, daughter of Shilhi. Then Jehoshaphat walked in the ways of his father Asa, and did not turn away from it. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. The high places, however, were not removed, and people had not yet set their hearts on the God of their fathers. As for the rest of the acts of Jehoshaphat, from beginning to end, they are indeed written in the Chronicles of Jehu, son of Hanani, which are recorded in the book of the kings of Israel. Later, Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, made an alliance with Ahaziah, king of Israel, who acted wickedly. They agreed to make ships to go to Tarshish, and these were built in Ezion-Geber. Then Eleazar, son of Dodoavahu of Mareshah, prophesied against Jehoshaphat, saying, Because you have allied yourself with Ahaziah, the Lord has destroyed your works. So the ships were wrecked and unable to sail to Tarshish. And Jehoshaphat rested with his fathers and was buried with them in the city of David. And his son Jehoram reigned in his place. Jehoram's brothers, the sons of Jehoshaphat, were Azariah, Yahiel, Zechariah, Azariah, Michael, and Shephatiah. These were all the sons of Jehoshaphat, king of Israel. Their father had given them many gifts of gold and silver and gold, and precious things, as well as the fortified cities in Judah. But he gave the kingdom to Jehoram because he was the firstborn. When Jehoram had established himself over his father's kingdom, he strengthened himself by putting to the sword all his brothers, along with some of the princes of Israel. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 8 years. And Jehoram walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, just as the house of Ahab had done, for he married a daughter of Ahab, and did evil in the sight of the Lord. Yet the Lord was unwilling to destroy the house of David because of the covenant he had made with David, and since he had promised to maintain a lamp for David and his descendants forever. In the days of Jehoram, Edom rebelled against the hand of Judah, and appointed their own king. That pesky wanting to self-determine again. It's only okay if Israel and Judah want to self-determine. It is not okay if any of the other peoples in the land want to. That has to be clear, right? And when the Edomites surrounded, so Jehoram crossed into Edom with all of his officers and his chariots. And when the Edomites surrounded him and his chariot commanders, he rose up and attacked by night. So to this day, Edom has been in rebellion against the hand of Judah. Likewise, Libnah rebelled against his rule at the same time, because Jehoram had forsaken the Lord, the God of his fathers. Jehoram also built high places in the hills of Judah. He had caused the people of Jerusalem to prostitute themselves, and had led Judah astray. Like the way it goes back and forth between these high places being there and not is amazing, right? The direct contradictions to itself in the same thing, like it's crazy. And then a letter came to Jehoram from Elijah the prophet, which stated, "This is what the Lord, the God of your father David, says. You have not walked in the ways of your father Jehoshaphat, or of Asa, king of Judah, but you have walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, and have caused Judah and the people of Jerusalem to prostitute themselves, just as the house of Ahab prostituted itself. You have also killed your brothers and your father's family, who were better than you. So behold, the Lord is about to strike your people, your sons, your wives, and all of your possessions with a serious blow. And day after day, you yourself will suffer from a severe illness, a disease of your bowels, until it causes your bowels to come out." Then the Lord stirred against Jehoram the spirit of the Philistines and Arabs who lived near the Cushites. So they went to war against Judah and invaded it and carried off all the possessions found in the king's palace, along with his sons and wives. Not a son was left to him except for Jehoahaz, his youngest. After all this, the Lord afflicted Jehoram with an incurable disease of the bowels. This continued day after day until 2 full years had passed. Finally, his intestines came out because of the disease, and he died in severe pain. And his people did not make a fire in his honor, as they had done for his fathers. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 8 years. He died, to no one's regret, and was buried in the city of David, but not in the tomb of kings. Wow, that's petty, huh? Like, that's an exposition on top of what we got in Kings. Ooh. And then the people of Jerusalem made Ahaziah, the youngest king of Jehoram, king in his place, since the raiders who had come into the camps with the Arabs had killed all the older sons. So Ahaziah, son of Jehoram, became king of Judah. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 1 year. His mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri. Ahaziah also walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, for his mother was his counselor in wickedness, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord, as the house of Ahab had done, for to his destruction they were his counselors after the death of his father. Ahaziah also followed their counsel, and went with Joram, son of Ahab, king of Israel, to fight Hazael, king of Aram, at Ramoth Gilead. But the Arameans wounded Joram, so he returned to Jezreel to recover from the wounds they had inflicted on him at El Ramah, when he fought against Hazael, king of Amram. Then Ahaziah, son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to Jezreel, to visit Joram, son of Ahab, because Joram had been wounded. Ahaziah's downfall came from God when he went to visit Joram. When Ahaziah arrived, he went out with Joram to meet Jehu, son of Nimshi, whom the Lord had anointed to destroy the house of Ahab. So, while Jehu was executing judgment on the house of Ahab, he found the rulers of Judah and the sons of Ahaziah's brothers who were serving Ahaziah, and he killed them. Then Jehu looked for Ahaziah, and Jehu's soldiers captured him while he was hiding in Samaria. So Ahaziah was brought to Jehu and put to death. They buried him, for they said, "He is the grandson of Jehoshaphat, who sought the Lord with all his heart." So no one was left from the house of Ahaziah with the strength to rule the kingdom. Then, when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw her son was dead, she proceeded to annihilate all the royal heirs of the house of Judah. But Jehoshabeath, daughter of the king Jeroboam, took Joash, son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the sons of the king who were being murdered. And she put him and his nurse in a bedroom, because Jehoshabeath, the daughter of King Jehoram, and the wife of Jehoiada, the priest, was Ahaziah's sister. She hid Joash from Athaliah so that she could not kill him. And Joash remained hidden with him in the house of God for 6 years, while Athaliah ruled the land. In the 7th year, Jehoiada strengthened himself and made a covenant with the commanders of the hundreds, with Azariah son of Jehoram, Ishmael son of Jehohanan, Azariah son of Obed, Maaseiah son of Adadiah, and Elishaphat son of Zitri, when they went throughout Judah and gathered the Levites from all the cities of Judah, and the heads of the families of Israel, when they came to Jerusalem, the whole assembly made a covenant with the kings in the house of God. "Behold, the king's son," said Jedediah. "He must reign, just as the Lord promised concerning the descendants of David. This is what you are to do. A third of you priests and Levites who came on duty on the Sabbath shall keep watch at the doors. A third shall be at the royal palace, and a third at the foundation gate, while all the others are in the courtyards of the house of the Lord. No one is to enter the house of the Lord except the priests and those Levites who serve. They may enter because they are consecrated, but all the people are to obey the requirement of the Lord. The Levites must surround the king with weapons in hand, and anyone who enters the temple must be put to death. You must stay close to the king wherever he goes." So the Levites and all Judah did everything that Jehoiada the priest had ordered. Each of them took his men, those coming on duty on the Sabbath and those going off duty, for Jehoiada the priest had not released any of the divisions. Then Jehoiada the priest gave to the commanders of hundreds the spears and the large and small shields of King David that were in the house of God. He stationed all the troops with their weapons in hand, surrounding the king by the altar and the temple, from the south side to the north side of the temple. Then Jehoiada and his sons brought out the king's son, put the crown on him, presented him with the testimony, and proclaimed him king. They anointed him and shouted, "Long live the king!" When Athaliah heard the noise of the people running and cheering the king, she went out to them in the house of the Lord. And she looked out and saw the king standing by his pillar at the entrance. The officers and trumpeters were beside the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets, while the singers with musical instruments were leading the praises. And then Athaliah tore her clothes and screamed, "Treason! Treason!" And Jehoiada the priest sent out the commanders of the hundreds in charge of the army, saying, "Bring her out between the ranks, and put to the sword anyone who follows her. For the priest had said, she must not be put to death in the house of the Lord. So they seized Athaliah, and she reached the entrance of the horse gate to the palace grounds, and there they put her to death. Jehoiada restores worship of the Lord. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between himself and the king and the people that they would be the Lord's people. So all the people went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed the altars and idols into pieces and killed Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. Moreover, Jehoiada put the oversight of the house of the Lord in the hands of the Levitical priests, whom David had appointed over the house of the Lord. To offer burnt offerings to the Lord, as is written in the law of Moses, with rejoicing and song, as ordained by David. He stationed gatekeepers at the gates of the house of the Lord, so that nothing unclean could enter for any reason. He also took with him the commander of hundreds, the nobles, the rulers of the people, and all the people of the land. And they brought the king down from the house of the Lord, and entered the royal palace through the upper gate. They seated King Joash on the royal throne, and all the people of the land rejoiced. And the city was quiet, because Athaliah had been put to the sword. And that is where we're going to stop for today. That's a fairly natural stopping point. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion. I didn't have a whole lot to add today. Again, Chronicles is a recounting of Kings with a little bit extra put in here and a little bit detail taken out there. So it's really the same story. There's no real need to dive into this stuff that we have already talked about in Kings. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you should definitely check out Kings. But I know that I hold some unconventional beliefs and that tends to step on toes. While that is never intentional, I do not apologize for it. This is just reading the book and talking about what it says, and where I think it goes and where you think it goes may not be the same place. I still firmly maintain that the only sacrifice ever required for you to be forgiven from your sin was for you to sacrifice your sin, for you to go to God for forgiveness, to ask Him to change your ways, to accept Him into you, and to live according to the law that He writes in your heart. And so most of this to me is window dressings on the wrong thing, right? Is arguing about the right way to do the wrong thing. And so I'm okay. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You're perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pit State. Peace.